Turning back to New Hampshire, where Bernie Sanders has declared victory in the first U.S. Democratic primary election in the 2020 presidential campaign. Antjuan Seawright joins me now from Manchester, New Hampshire. He is a CBS News political contributor, and as well, he is a Democratic strategist. Hey, Antjuan, thanks for joining us.
Good morning from New Hampshire, where it's cold.
I know, I could tell because we saw Laura Podesta earlier today, and she had her jacket on inside, so I figured it must have been cold. All right.
Well, just know my southern bones are not used to this.
Just drink some hot tea, hot tea. So let's get into this. Sanders wins last night. He also won in 2016 as well. So clearly New Hampshire likes him. But he's going to be moving on to two other states, Nevada and South Carolina. It's going to be a little bit of a bumpier road, I think, in Nevada. You could tell me, because as I understand it, there's a pretty big union out there. I think it's the culinary union, culinary workers union. Right, and they do not like his Medicare for All proposal, though they're not coming out against him specifically. So moving forward, how is Sanders going to maintain this momentum?
Well, I think the momentum transferred from Iowa for both Bernie Sanders and Mayor Pete. But Anne-Marie, let me say one thing about that. Keep in mind, last night there were only 24 delegates up for grab. There were 41 delegates up for grab in Iowa. There will be 48 in Nevada, and there will be 54 in South Carolina. You need 1,991 delegates total to win on first ballot. So while winning the first two contests were big for Bernie Sanders, he still has some more winning to do. Shifting to Nevada, not only will the culinary workers be a challenge for him, this will be the first time in which we will see a real flirtation with the power and the significance of the black and brown vote. The good news for Bernie Sanders is he has improved his bandwidth with Latino voters who will have a large say-so in the Nevada nominating processes. But when the big game is on the line, everything matters, and not having certain groups and having them work against you in politics in a caucus type environment will matter a hell of a lot.
All right, so meanwhile, we've got Warren and Biden, who both, at some point in the summertime, they were both kind of considered major contenders, and then things don't seem to be working out for them, at least with these first two contests. So, what is going wrong for them, and what do they need to do to switch it up? I know former Vice President Biden has been kind of talking about the fact that these first two contests, you can't just look at them alone. You got to look at the first four to get a greater sense of where things are going. But let's talk about what they need to do to turn things around.
I think for Elizabeth Warren, the challenges are different for Vice President Biden. Vice President Biden, once we get to Nevada, once we head to South Carolina, and even into Super Tuesday, I think he has something she does not have, the secret weapon called strength, relationships, and trust with the most loyal constituency in this party, African-American voters. For Elizabeth Warren, I think she's going to have to find her magic and become a push and pull candidate, in which she was prior to her drop in Iowa. She was pushing the political conversation to the point where she was pulling from several different political candidates. That magic has dampened down a bit, so she's in a unique posture. A poor showing for her last night, I think, was more hurtful than it was for Vice President Biden, because she does not have the political stool to stand on with African American voters as the VP does in South Carolina and in Super Tuesday states, on top of the potential money issues that could come along with the lackluster performance so far.
So a few people dropped out yesterday, too. There was Patrick Duvall. He was kind of a latecomer. I think amongst the ones that dropped out, Andrew Yang probably has been having the most impact on the campaigning and on the conversation. He managed to make it onto the debate stage, I think, all but one time. So I'm wondering, what you think the impact of losing some of these candidates might be moving forward, particularly Andrew Yang.
Well, there are several things we have to consider when we consider impact. Number one, at this point, that means there will be no candidates of color on the debate stage and in this nomination process, when we know black and brown voters are the loudest voices on the Democratic choir.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Number two, all of them. Well, that's true. Well, there will not be a significant amount of black and brown voters in this process who will have a likely chance of going forward in this process. That's number one. Number two, all of them, those who are no longer with us, have added so much value, and this party in this process will benefit. I think what this process has taught all of us is that you do not have to look like me to represent my interests or for me to trust you to advocate for what I think. And so because of that, I think the candidates are going to have a laser-focused agenda, speaking to and speaking about and advocating for the issues that these candidates have highlighted during this process, because all of them had one thing in common. They had a following that was under this big tent we call the Democratic Party.
That is very true. Antjuan Seawright, thank you so much.
Thank you, Anne Marie.